So I'm going to make some noise and adjust the mic.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Adjust the mic.
Adjust the mic.
Adjust the mic.
You just keep talking.
Here's more ASMR. Hello, we're here today. Post pizza. And boy, you're probably good for not actually having to smell my breath right now. But I can't say the same for Alexis.
I'm moving away rapidly. It's moving away rapidly to the other side of the room.
Rapid.
So you were saying that you grew up on books, that was a huge focus of your family.
Yeah.
That was a very valuable asset. And what led you from cruising sections in the bookstore, finding the LGBT section, going into media of all sorts? Because I kind of came into your chapter when you were already into film, into camera work, into and now starting the podcast. So what got you so excited about all these platforms?
Well, and now I'm getting into digital archiving and preservation.
Okay.
The older I get. And that's kind of related. But I will say, I always tell people that I basically, my family was the Addams family. Mm-hmm. I grew up with people who...
Which character were you?
Well, only...
You all change characters.
Only my gynecologist knows for sure. But... the Pats. But it's like you come from these people who act like they were deposed royalty from like Russia or something, even though they basically grew up working class a lot of times. Like my grandmother went to Kansas to have her child, which I'm pretty sure was in those days where it's like, oh, you're having a kid and you're not married or something. We have to send you off on vacation. Yeah, we have to send you on vacation here. She started having kids when she was 14. Mm. So it's like from a guy in New Zealand, which she never like to talk about much. So I can only imagine how fun that relationship was.
Right.
And this is a woman who had already been around the world, right? Mm. She grew up in Thailand until she was 4. Didn't realize her parents were her parents because she was raised by the help. At one point in the family, there was money. Yeah. But then, her dad, who was a pilot, divorced her mom, and her mom became a secretary. And so then that's the point where the family, was more working class to struggling, right?
Okay.
From then on. And so all these things in her early years kind of impacted her, and it got her to marry a Danish American. Okay. Because if you've been to Thailand at all, there's a huge fetish for blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Mm. And I can only imagine it's opposites attract, But that was the joke in the family. It was like, yeah, she was brainwashed at an early age.
I'm just saying.
There is a whole industry in Thailand. Next podcast. But anyway,
this will go behind the paywall.
Exactly. Behind the paywall, please donate to the communities who will tell you the dirty jokes. But anyway, so you have this whole international influence in the family anyway, right?
There you are, influence.
Freaks, artists, women who didn't adhere to the commonalities of the time. Like, there were a lot of female pilots in our family line, too. There were people who went back to the beginning of California. So it was like we had a lot of diversity. We had a lot of insanity.
Bold bravery. Yeah.
Exactly.
No filters.
The exact kind of aristocratic mindset that you would expect from complete weirdos. the fun old school weirdos that you only see in movies like My Man Godfrey.
There you go.
And so that's the kind of people I come from. Is like people who valued knowledge, books, and history over money, and because they just felt like, well, money happens, right? Yeah. It happens to you. It's either there or it isn't there.
Comes and goes.
It comes and goes. But knowledge is the thing that you hang on to in life, and it teaches you how to survive and have a sense of humor.
And you have to work to acquire it. You can read. You can observe.
Mm-hmm.
You can apply it or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm pretty good at observing as well as reading. But it's sort of
You're really good at the application of knowledge, though.
Well, actually, I am.
There you go. That's the difference, folks, is between being a weirdos who appreciate knowledge and then actually having the determination to apply it. My family, at a certain point in their family line, didn't do that well on the application. So that's what you struggle with. Also, it ranged between having personalities that were so... I would describe my own as kind of like psychotically determined at times, because I've always been able to push myself when I needed to achieve a goal. So it's like a very few barriers. Yeah. It can be a great thing. It can be a very unhealthy thing at times too.
That's good to admit.
But that's the part of the whole thing. Here's where it's a
green flag. And
here's where it's a green and a red flag.
Here's where it's a strength. And then here's where it's toxic.
And I tell that to people all the time because they admire me for some achievements, like losing weight or doing knowledge, gaining knowledge, doing teaching, that sort of thing. But I tell you, it's like everyone has the ability to do these things. It's really just how much you push yourself to actually do it, you know, and if you actually are serious about interested in this stuff, you do eventually get there, whether it takes you time because of different things, maybe ADHD or other things. You just have to find the way that works for you to get there.
So you're much kinder on that than I am.
I figured. I've learned to be kind.
What's your take?
I may not think that everyone has the ability to do that.
What would you think?
A lot of people do not have the ability to acquire knowledge easily. And even with a lot of work, it is very difficult for them. Now, part of that is how you define knowledge, because there's probably something they're excellent at. And the key is those people that are thinking about it need to figure out what that is and try to direct them that direction. Then I would totally agree with you. But it's also not something they have to spend a lot of effort to do if it's something that they're actually good at and capable of. But a lot of people are out there beating their head against the wall on something that they have absolutely no talent for whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And they actually keep doing the same thing over and over. And, you know, it's like, oh, they'll buy...
Definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Yes, they'll buy this online class that's going to teach them how to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And then they'll buy another one because this one didn't work. And then they'll buy another one because that one didn't work. Mm-hmm. And then they'll buy another one. And at this point, you're starting to get to the bit of, okay, look, this is not an investment, it's an expense, and it's not going well.
That's where the scientist side of it comes in, because you got to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to try different things and be like, I love doing that at work where it's like, okay, I'm going to put together a tripod, or I'm going to do this thing I've never done before. Let's try it one way. That didn't work. Nearly blew up the wall. Okay, let's try it another way.
Well, and you're. I mean, I'm just listening because I think that you're somebody who really truly has put one foot in front of the other over and over again. You don't gloss over your shortcomings. You keep going. You know, but. It's not just how does someone apply something, it's also how does someone go through failure. What would you say that your method is for that? Like if you could pinpoint it at this point, because you're used to troubleshooting when you don't know how to turn something technical on and not beating yourself up, but maybe not everyone is, right? And like something that simple, because I think once you get to multiple platforms, you might be taking for granted a little bit like how much endurance you have in that.
I mean, different people have different pain thresholds. Yeah, is what I've learned.
That's true. So when you're in a failure moment, like how do you work through that?
It depends. Like most of the time it's pretty unflappable against majority of stuff in life. But I think that's because after when I finally started getting to the fun part of life when you're older.
And how old are you for listeners if they can't judge by your voice?
I was born in the heady, many days of 1985. So, you know, a lot of people do not consider that old, but then also my mom describes me as you were born a bitter 60-year-old divorcee. So I agree. I came out being like, well, this isn't ideal. These people are obviously fools, and I'm going to have to learn to work with them. And that's how I've been ever since. But, once you accept that side of life, you're like, okay, this isn't ideal, but you have to realize that when you fail, you have a more fun life. You actually do. When you take the wrong turn down a road in Arizona that could lead to a drug cartel, you're not sure, and then your car breaks down, well, that was a more exciting trip than you would have had if you had had no trouble at all. That's life.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are afraid to fail, maybe because they're risk adverse or because they think, the fear of failure just gets so built up that you lose curiosity.
Think about it this way.
You're also afraid to do anything.
Right.
Yeah,
you don't
think
think
about
it
it
could
this
go
way.
awesome. You don't think it could be a wild adventure. You don't
There's a
think
saying,
about that sometimes.
Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I say whatever doesn't kill you makes you more interesting.
Okay.
Because largely human beings can be boring as crap. But if you have a lot of failures in your life, like look at Lincoln, he kept failing his ass all over the place. You're
Just
like,
fail forward.
you did this one thing and you finally succeeded, and then you got shot in a theater. But people still talk about you.
There you go.
A lot of it has to do with the last one being a success.
I've always hoped that I have a really interesting demise. Like, if I don't have it natural, I'm going to try and orchestrate it.
So how would you design your own demise?
I think I'm going to try and hire someone to steal my body and, go on some kind of grand, orchestrate a search for it and try and figure out what's going on. And then if we could leave it in a conspiracy theory, all the better. Just burn it on a boat somewhere.
Hypothetically, she hasn't thought about it at all.
We know
I
several.
haven't reserved the ticket.
We know several of your friends. Why would you have to hire someone?
Well, that's true. I could probably get a bunch of them to do it for free because they would just be tickled.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
signing the NDAs that gets difficult because they're also deeply suspicious people.
What NDAs? It didn't happen, so you don't need an NDA.
You don't need an NDA. It didn't happen. So says
So
the
what's
NDA.
a good year for this? No.
It's coming. Give me another 5 to 10 and we'll see how it's going.
I can see it all now. Someone saying, okay, I'm Mel's executor. Let me read through the... Oh, my God.
I found this podcast and I'm starting to wonder.
Why did I do this?
Why did I do
Why
this?
did I admit it?
Maybe that's why you technically don't have to tell someone if they're your executor.
Well, it could be.
I have a feeling most people who know me will expect that kind of thing from me. Yeah, well.
That's why you don't tell them.
There you go. There you go.
Surprise!
You don't need to tell them. Sometimes people are better off not knowing.
Then they won't worry about it.
Exactly. It's like the DNA tests they have now to determine, who you might be related to all over the place or your genealogy. Well, you may find some things out that you really didn't want to know.
That you really didn't want to know.
Well, the problem I have with that is they tell the other person, too.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's
Not even that. They'll tell several other tech companies and various governments.
Exactly. I mean, if it was something that I'm getting it all back and nobody else sees it, okay, now I'm curious.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like you're going to tell them too, right? No.
You're going to tell a lot of people this. It's kind of like putting your personal diary from childhood out there for publication.
No, it's stuff you didn't even know before.
There you go.
So you don't know.
Your parents' diary on you.
Exactly.
Beyond them, the things they didn't talk about.
The things they didn't remember.
And then you have to get to wondering about this relative that I apparently had from this other part of the world.
Uh-oh.
I wonder who that was.
Oh yeah. Who had the affair?
The one visitor that one time.
Oh yeah.
Alexis, you've been really achieved in life, but you haven't all had it paved in gold. How do you deal with failure? If you could pinpoint some of those things.
I get mad, cry, and try to kill people. No, I'm joking.
I love the last part.
Just your average.
I concur.
Just your
Okay, so
regular checklist.
to be serious,
Sure, yeah.
it's a
I
question.
feel like it's something people deal with, but
It's a question of what's important.
Okay.
And most of the failures people have are not important.
Okay.
I mean, it's important for the moment. It's important for your ego, which,
We have
nodding.
inflated ones.
We're nodding. Yes. Oh yeah, that ego. Yeah, it is
the
important.
older
for
you
that.
get, the less your ego matters to you, or
Oh,
should.
is that true? Okay.
I don't know. I think it inflates more over time, but it gets more fantastical. Like you're at the point where you're like, I invented tinfoil. Yeah, if you think about it a certain way.
Well, you mean like, am I planning on having a 28-inch waist again? Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry.
Hey.
That's about as
Fantasies.
Yeah, exactly. And I could, but I'd be cut in half.
Which, some assistants for magicians, they love it. It's a life
Exactly.
for them. But
Yeah, we have
and
friends
I
who
think-
may be able to accommodate
I
this.
think the biggest thing is to deal with reality.
Okay.
Because question one, is it failure?
Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
mean, let's say that something happens and your project dies.
Right,
Whatever.
right.
I don't care what the project is.
Yeah.
And it's not a being of any sort. It's a situation, something you were doing. And it's been something that's been stressing you out forever. Maybe it's not a bad thing that it died.
that's true.
That's true. That's true. We oftentimes don't look at the relief.
And and if that's the case, maybe you have a better project that shows up. Now, it sucks if it's your first thing you've ever done. Like right out of
That's true.
college, you get something to do, and it craters.
That's true.
That's about the worst thing I can
First
think of.
failures are
and
hard.
But just remember, you went to college and you graduated.
Right.
True.
Right.
So-
Some people never do that.
Exactly. Now, it's your first job you've ever had, and you're a plumber's assistant, and you blow up somebody's pipes.
I mean, some jobs have very big costs to them.
Yes.
Yes.
And that gets to
Practice
be
in
a real
advance.
problem. And oddly enough, that's not that hard to do.
I gather.
It's so easy to blow things up. Like, I don't know why we need a whole book to describe how to do it. I mean, really, you could just stumble into it.
Well, I mean, part of my college degree is
As a
propulsion.
chemist.
The only difference between propulsion and blowing things up is put a plug in it.
There you go.
Well, you were talking about Pete Buttigieg, and that brings this this example of him running for president and not winning. People are saying, "Well, he lost," and you said, "Well, did he?" That's an example of is that failure?
And one of the
is that
things
not
is,
failure?
I mean, with Pete Buttigieg, number one, he's totally brilliant. I like him a lot. When the first time I talked to him, I started to talk to him about things and some transgender issues and things like that. And he had a pretty blank look on his face. And I'm like, you have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? And he paused for a minute. And then he said, look, I'm 3 years into this gay thing I am. I don't understand it.
Fair.
I have no
love when
idea
people
about the
admit
rest
that
of the
they don't
thing.
know. Yeah.
Now, I then made a stupid statement. I said, well, would you like me to get you up to speed on the rest of the community?
See?
And he said yes. And I'm like, oh, shit, I have like 2 weeks to put
The
together.
rest of the community.
together.
Although if you
training
know
class.
Alexis, you know that she probably has like 50 presentations in a hard drive somewhere.
Yes.
It's finding the
And-
hard drive that's the hard part.
No, I can find the hard drive. It's finding what's on it because they're big drives.
That's true.
But then standing right there, because she butted in, was Sheila Jackson Lee.
Ah,
He
there
said,
you go.
oh, I want a copy too. And so, suddenly away we go. Now, when it became obvious Buttigieg was not going to win, and it did become obvious he was not going to win, and there's lots of reasons. None of them bad. Most of them have to do with the fact that this is the first time he's run for anything, so he might as well try president. I mean, other than mayor, and he did good as mayor. And he called around at people that had been advisors of various sorts. I was one of the people that got called.
Okay.
And he said, okay, so we're finally facing the facts. We probably aren't going to win. What do you think? And I'm like, drop out now as quick as you can. Biden is going to be in Indiana, your state. Go see him in Indiana.
Perfect timing.
Tell him you're getting ready to drop out. Make the announcement there is a big deal. And see what kind of a deal you can make. He will probably give you anything you want.
Wonderful.
And what he told Buttigieg was, what cabinet position do you want?
No, there you go.
And Buttigieg did not want Secretary of State. He said, I don't know anything about being Secretary of State.
Well,
and I'm not competent. Secretary of Defense, he's like, I was a medic.
yeah, big job.
Now, that's better than our current Secretary of Defense.
No,
but,
Well, there's facts.
But he was actually looking for something that, made sense. And he said, I want transportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not bad.
Now, his reasoning for that was really straightforward because everybody's like, transportation, that's not really glamorous or anything.
Right.
He said, well, every big bill that everyone's talking about is an infrastructure bill. That's transportation. That gives me all the money except for what defense has. I'll have all of it to spend. And I'm a city mayor. I know about towns.
Yes.
And transportation goes from a town to a town.
Yes, and they know that they need to update their roads.
And he said, that's the part I know about. And being able to fix that will be wonderful. And then when he went for confirmation before the Senate, he went in, introduced his husband and two kids initially. That got rid of the whole, well, are you gay? It's like, my husband and two kids.
My husband thinks so, yes.
Did I forget to say that? Nobody even brought it up. The only thing they brought up was that as soon as the confirmations were over, they wanted him to visit their state because they wanted to show him the infrastructure that they needed replaced.
Yeah,
he was going to have the money.
Deal.
And, at that point, once all of the senior senators started doing that, I'm like, oh, he's got it.
Yeah.
So back to your answer, is it actually failure?
No, it's not.
And what relief did it bring you? Like, he wasn't president yet, but he's doing just fine.
But he's still in the running if he wants to be.
Yeah, and
there's nothing that says, oh, no, you're, kiss of death type stuff.
I don't see anywhere where people are slamming any insults towards him or his husband or his kids. I'm sure it exists, but for the most part, he's going around from state to state, city to city, and doing large negotiations for people. I mean, it's a big job.
Well, and that's done now, of course. But he also, when, he has had people, call him names and that sort of stuff. Frequently, what he will do is say, can we talk?
There you go.
Because he's not afraid to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And usually they've calmed down a lot. Like, he's the only person who voluntarily would go on Fox News.
That's true. He does go on there.
That's hardcore.
And he makes, no, guys, you can't do this or can't do, none of that type stuff. He's like, sure. But I get to talk too.
Yep.
That's his one thing. And he does very well. And he comes out, very well, and they don't attack him. They did it a couple times, and then after that, they're like, "There's no point."
Yeah, if you remain unflappable, you actually more unnerve the other person. I'll never forget this one Bill O'Reilly episode during 9/11 or after 9/11, where he had this protester on who was a very young person, and they weren't as well trained in like combating kind of media attacks and things like that. He wanted to characterize the anti-war movement a very certain way. So he's not like, he can speak and overpower you. So he's trained in that. He knows how to do that. So a younger person who's not very trained in the, battle of language. But this person did mention the name of a guy who was a veteran who also lost his father on one of the planes.
Okay.
And so they said, well, he's a part of the movement too, because he was kind of like stringing them along like, oh, no American who's a real American, right, would be against war.
Right.
Certainly not a vet or anything. And so they mentioned that name. And so he demanded to have that guy on. Okay. Well, that guy was far more adept at combating misinformation and all this other stuff. And he remained calm. He addressed all the things. It was actually Bill O'Reilly who lost his cool and had them cut the guy's mic when he couldn't get him to react.
Wow.
You know, he just kept his cool, kept contradicting all these lies that Bill O'Reilly tried to throw at him. And so Bill O'Reilly was the one that started shouting and started being irrational and yelling to cut the guy's mic because it completely derailed his belief system. He thought a veteran cannot not support America going in to destroy a company that's offended us, right? A veteran can't not monger for war and can't not, especially one who's lost a parent in it, can't not want this. And by seeing someone who didn't, he was like, oh, well, that whole world view is gone now. You've met the reality of what you said couldn't exist.
Some would say you lose the conversation when you lose your cool. So, yeah.
I mean, I end up talking to lots of people who are going to go do advocacy and those sorts of things. And, you know, I always say, okay, the first thing is don't get mad. You can act mad, but you can't be mad.
Right. There's a difference.
And, you know, and make sure if you're acting mad that it has a real reason behind it. But, you know, if you get mad, you lose everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, you watch it and every time someone does, away you go. And they're like, well, but it just makes me mad. I'm like, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Then you aren't a person that should go
lost
talk to this particular issue.
Yeah. It could actually make the situation worse because you're just feeding into what they're assuming.
Oh, absolutely. And you'll be a soundbite.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not a good one.
Not a good one.
Absolutely.
And, you know, people who haven't done a lot of politics, they have a lot of trouble not getting mad.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that is interesting, that, you know, they want to go out, they want to do this, they want to do that because they want to holler at people. I'm like, don't holler.
Right. I have a friend who's a Native American, and she said religion and politics are just an excuse to hate. I mean, that's the way she looks at it. It gives people a free pass to go into people's lives and do that. And I don't think all people, but I mean, that's how she's seen it. That's how a lot of her community members
Well, and
were
if she's
killed.
Native American, there certainly is cause for that.
Yeah. There's some precedents there.
Absolutely. So, you know, I want to bring it back to being unflappable for the things that you love, Mel, because what is it that you want the world to know about the things that you're creating?
Just like be true to who you are. I mean, it's a terrible way to live your life when you are trying to hide who you are. It's like, I've been there in points in my life. Most of the time, I can never successfully try and hide who I am. Like I have masks, like everyone has masks. You put on the work drag. You're nice to
layers.
people. Yeah, when I did wedding videography, you'd be in Catholic churches and trying to pretend that you didn't all want to get out before 3 hours, you know, but it's like anything I did, whether I believed in it personally or not, I would find a way to connect myself to it. So I would be like, if I'm covering this person's wedding, I'm going to care about their life. I'm going to care about this moment in time about them. If I have to edit their story, I'm going to find a way to make a connection.
Threads. Yeah.
Exactly. I may not come from this person's background. I may not understand why they want to do this thing they're doing or why they want to have like a 20-hour edit of their wedding, but I'm going to put every bit of my soul into figuring out how can I connect to this to give it an honorable presentation. Because I feel like if you're gonna do something, you better do it well.
And I think a lot of people know that about your work and how you show up and the labor that you put into things. I mean, you're a very physical person, having to carry cameras around, having to go back and forth to set sound up. You know, I mean, there's a lot of steps involved in all the things that you do when you're working events and whatnot. So if people wanted to find what you're interested in or support you or get interested in the things that you want some viewership, if you will, in behind your projects, like where could they find that? What would they see at this point in your creating aspirations or inspirations?
I've always wished I could say, and now I'm brought to you by the Chubb Group and viewers like you. But unfortunately, I'm not sponsored right now, but maybe in future. But I'm terrible at social media too. I do have some pages, on there that I probably express way too much on. Usually I just try to, reshare science and everything else. But my main thing is like, if I could leave one thing for the world, I think it would be like, learn to love your mistakes and your ugly sides a little bit more, because your ugly sides need some love too.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
Love the monster inside.
That's beautiful.
And,
Yeah, but we know you like monsters.
I love monsters. I love monsters more than normality.
Alexis wanted to ask a question to each one of our podcast people that come for interviews. What was your question?
I was hoping she forgot.
No, I think it's the perfect time.
Yeah, and that is, to you, what's the meaning of life?
Oh, gosh. Leave them traumatized.
I'll go with that.
There you go.
It's the longer lasting impression, let me tell you.
There you go. Okay.
So when you pass through, you essentially want them to sit there shaking their head like, I don't know what that was.
I know what that was, but I'll never forget it. And so I'm a little bit of your soul now.
So any fun things coming up that you're looking forward to?
Ooh, let's see.
Because we got to throw in some fun.
That's true.
I think you were saying we need to make advocacy and things like this fun again. But, what's fun in general for you in 2025?
Like this, getting together with friends in community, creating stuff. It's like, please don't let whatever's happening in your life or in the world right now stop you from being engaged and being out there and doing things you love, because you only ever have today. Mm-hmm. Nothing else is promised to you. Mm-hmm. So it's like everything you do every day, whether you go sit down, read a book that you really want to read, or go watch an old horror movie at night while you edit. Just do it. Do it now. Enjoy it. Tune the manicness of the world out, because the world's always manic. It will always be manic. So that's just consistent. But yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
And
always, maybe we'll have you back, like as things come up, as topics come up. We want to talk about a few different things, maybe behind the paywall, but maybe in front of the paywall. We'll see. So.
I really want to know more of Alexis's history, because that's a whole nother series.
that's going to be threads through the podcast and things. So.
Oh, heck yeah.
And the other thing is that it's really funny. Maria Gonzalez, who's a good friend of mine, we have lunch most Sundays with Jack Valinsky, who's Jack.
Love him.
And things come up just about every Sunday that I just make a comment, and Maria's like, wait a minute. How did I not know that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because it just came up.
Just came up. Have you ever, that time I was with the Cosa Nostra, and you're like, whoa, rewind a minute.
No, and we are going to talk about the things in Mexico.
Oh. That will be in Spanish. Tune in el noche.
Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for the laughs, and to everyone listening, thanks for having us in your ears, and we hope you're working through your failures with creativity and community and taking care.
Good night, wherever you are.
How am I going to top that with saying good night?
You could bottom that with saying good night.
Oh, I could just whisper it.
There you go. ASMR. Finish with ASMR.
But, the night basically likes whispering.
Yes.